Hello, in this video I want to talk a little bit about the polarization of certain opinions and how an us and them mentality also extends to the so-called orthodox versus the so-called unorthodox views on some important pieces in ancient history, the pyramids, Baalbek, and for instance. As with so many other things, it often comes down to an echo chamber, and so you can choose to find what you want to hear, and it's very easy to ignore those things which don't fit your opinion, even to be aggressive towards them. But for instance, the Colossi of Memnon, massive statues from a solid block. They were moved over 675 kilometers, 420 miles. They weigh huge amount. So there's a mystery. Well, how were they moved? Well, as is often the case, the orthodox will go one way, the unorthodox, the alternative will go another way. But I think have to be fair, and so I'm going to try and be open and to do with both sides. Now, for instance, we see this older depiction, and you can see in front of a sled, the sand is being wetted. Now, moistened. Now, there were experiments done. It's not a hard thing to do. You could go down to the beach and test it yourself. But dry sand versus wet sand, by wetting the sand, you actually do make the movement of large heavy objects across the sand that much easier. But okay, look, another in the Megaliths at Baalbek. Now they weigh between 1,200 to 1,650 tons. The largest of them, the stone of Jenin, 1,650. The largest stone that's known that's ever been moved by man. But also, like in Baalbek as well, there are a few other places. So it's Roman temples. I think this is a temple of Jupiter, I do believe, if I remember rightly. But you can even see sort of the people standing on the older foundations that were pre-Roman. Again, these are massive stones. Not just have they been moved, they've been set with some precision and shaped. It's a huge effort, even if you were to be using modern tools. Now, the sort of extreme position on one side is to say, well, it was aliens or some super advanced, again, alienish, futuristic technology. And I think that. So people say, well, I can't do it, and well, you set yourself up, because you can't do it because you don't think you can. You've made an assumption that it's an impossible thing. But let's look at some examples in recent times. And so, just to, for instance, in Indonesia in 1915, they moved to build graves and monuments for important people who had passed. They cut and moved massive stones. This is there's photographic evidence, there's descriptions of it. Here in Australia, well, an important place. So you have the largest stone ever moved by road at the time. Now, this stone was not testing the limits of available technology, but to move, even a stone of any sort of size, it is quite a complex thing. It takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot of willpower to want to do it. But now I want to have a look at the bronze horseman statue in St Petersburg, which sits on the Thunderstone. Now, it depends. This is or very close to the largest stone ever moved, and it was moved in relatively modern times, but with very primitive techniques. Now, for instance, so here's a depiction so it was around 1678. Now, again, so things like this won't be often dealt with amongst the alternative view, to say, because it spoils, again, as much as the orthodox view has a mindset, a narrative that they want to follow. I think that also much of the alternative view falls into that same trap. Now, the Thunderstone itself was half buried in marshland, and the engineer responsible for moving it decided we'll wait till winter when the ground is frozen, then they dug it up. Then a sled was made for it with a special track, and early version, basically ball bearings, bronze spheres, were used to move on the sled. Now, because the track made for it was only 100 meters long, they had to dismantle it as they moved along. But the team that moved it was around 400 men, no animals, or no, I should have specified, no powered machinery was used. They did use some existing technology, capstans, used on sailing ships. You'll see, when to lift the sails and to lift the pieces of that. When you see the sailors, they would put the rods in and walk around that, basically a big winch. And so 32 men on the capstans. I'm not sure whether it was each or on both, but also with a block and tackle, you can move a lot more weight than the power is. But anyway, it took them 9 months to get it to the barge, and it was placed on a barge and taken to St Petersburg, where it had to be moved again. This was a massive effort, but to move it 6 kilometers or a little bit over that to get it to the ocean, and plus all the energy involved shifting it onto the barge. Anyway, it took 9 months to move 6 kilometers. And it weighs 1,500 tons, heavier than all except for one of the megaliths at Baalbek. So again, it could be maybe even equal, because the stone has been shaped and reworked along the way. They didn't. The original stone might have been the equivalent to the largest of the stones at Baalbek. So it's not unfair to say that the largest stone moved in history was done in the 1700s. And but then you have to go back to the question. Okay, well, this can be done, but for instance, the Colossi of Memnon in Egypt, they were moved, nearly 700 kilometers. So at any rate of speed, this would have taken a huge amount of time, even with a relatively large workforce and just using manpower alone. So the question is, these things, it's not a matter of the technology, it's a matter of willpower and energy and time. Give it time and man can achieve amazing things. And that's why it's a bit unfortunate, this whole, let's just say, if I can't envision it, if I can't imagine myself doing it, let's call it aliens. But on that same tax over Great Pyramid of Giza in itself, now there are 2.5 million stones, and for the moment we're just going to simplify it. So just imagine it's just stones piled on top of each other. The base had already been leveled. There's nothing, it all been prepared, and they're just now cutting stones and moving on there. Well, the official story is that it took 20 years to construct the Great Pyramid, and again we're going to give them the official view. We're going to give them quite a bit of make it easy for them and remove a lot of it. But anyway, so 20 years, 365 and a quarter, days per year. So we have 7,305, we'll round it off, days in that time. But we only have 12 working hours, and again we're giving them a conservative, because that's assuming they worked every single day, 365 days a year, 12 hours a day, and that's not the way it works. But we're going to give them a little bit, and so as you can see, that works out. Now, how many minutes is that? And then you divide those minutes by 2.5 million stones, and again the exact number is not sure, but that's very close to the number. And what we have is that every 2.1 minutes the stone was put in place, and again we're not including the huge amount of other work that went into it. So we're being quite liberal with that at the moment. But well, for instance, there were some recent surveys done using the most modern equipment, and you have to point out so that each of these levels of the pyramid was set to a very, very high precision. They're not just random blocks stacked on top of each other. They were done to a very high technical amount of skill. So that needs to begin with say, yeah, they're not just throwing blocks on top of each other. They were doing it very precisely. But now consider the energy or the effort and what's required to move. So when this picture starts, basically this is going to run for 2.1 minutes, and so you get an idea now. During that time, firstly, they would have to cut the stone. Now, a lot of it seems that a lot of the quarry was actually close by, but still, you have to get to the quarry. You have to, cut it all out, and that in itself is, a difficult thing. But once you've got it out, the stone doesn't come out in this nice rectangular shape. It will require some shaping and some preparation. Once that's done, then the stone has to be put onto the sled, or however it's moved, or the equipment involved with it. The ropes have to be attached. The foreman has to arrange the men. Then the stone has to be moved, and it's, again, even from a short distance, large stones like this take some time. It's not, you're not going from low speed to top speed at the beginning as well. Once it's reached the pyramid itself, it has to be lifted, and once it has been lifted, and again we're being not detailing, so the higher you get, the more difficult it gets. It's a very, very tall. It's basically a skyscraper, huge. Then you have to move the stone. So once it's lifted, then you have to prepare the stone for moving, and then you have to move it into place. So from the edge, you have to move it into the middle of it. Once it's in there, because these levels are all precisely done, there would presumably be some adjusting of the stone. It would be shaped a little bit more to fit the requirements. It's not just some random. And then the stone has to be set. It has to be checked, and might have to be removed, reshaped, put back in. And then when that's done, the workers, the moving equipment, everything has to be torn down, taken back down, and then taken back to the quarry again. So in this, just to describe the process in a very simple way, it is, 2 minutes is, not even enough time. Again, I've left out a lot of stuff that has to be done. But the pyramid is not just a pile of stones. There are many it actually goes, there was a 3 by 3 foot tunnel that goes down underground 300 feet. So you could only have one workman at a time carving that, and that would also have to be done so they could move in and out of the pyramids. So for that work to continue on, there would have to be some adjustment in the construction of it to allow for these and to go down what's called the unfinished chamber there, which is this rough. And let's just assume that it was, they just abandoned this chamber because they didn't have enough time. Well, other people have pointed out that this actually adds to the acoustic value of a pyramid, and that pyramid was tuned. But anyway, you have all these internal structures, a lot of it made from red granite, transported from 400, hundreds of kilometers away. And again, that had to be cut, put on a barge, brought to site, brought closer to the pyramid, and then moved onto site. All of this adds to the amount of time. So plus you have the internal shafts, all these other features were done with great precision. They're not just some random thing. So again, now this 2.1 minutes per stone is actually reduced much further. So the official story just doesn't wash up. So it's just really it really is. It's laughable. It's silly. It's ridiculous. But on the other hand, with time, people could do it. It's a matter of willpower, and humans have an amazing ability to do things. And so, again, to say, well, I don't know, therefore it's aliens or something or another. But actually, I think it does a great disservice to the human spirit and what we are capable of doing. It's just, again, a matter of time and a matter of willpower. And just because someone says, well, I can't see how it's done, I couldn't imagine myself doing it. Well, maybe you cannot do it, and that's some people can, some people can dream big, some people can't, some people can plan and put things into it, and others can't. But so again, the orthodox view has big holes in it, but I think also the unorthodox view tends to leave out some important facts in regards to what people can do, what they have done in modern times. And the Thunderstone is either the second largest or the largest stone ever moved, and that was done by manpower alone, and that's not something that gets talked about. But anyway, this us and them thing, I think, is a big issue in regards to both the orthodox and the unorthodox. You need to have an open mind to things. You need to be able to accept your mistakes. Also, I think it's very important to remember that human beings can do very amazing things. again, just if they have the will, if they have the time, and if well the time and will is all it takes, and we can achieve and have achieved many amazing things. And so, hip hip hooray for humans. We can do a lot of awesome stuff. It's but anyway, with that, hope you enjoyed and have a good one, and hope you got something out of it.